Welcome back, aspirants, to today's GS2 Explainer on the Rungta IAS Academy channel. I'm Rahul sir, and my esteemed colleague Anjali Madam is here with me. Today, we're diving straight into decoding the constitutional and federal dimensions of Ladakh's recent administrative developments.
Hello, everyone. Yes, this topic is just absolutely crucial for your upcoming exams. We're going to break down the exact analytical framework you need to confidently tackle this in both your mains answers and, of course, your personality test.
So imagine the UPSC interview board poses this exact question to you. You really cannot afford to stumble here.
Absolutely, sir. It's the core dilemma, isn't it? To fetch those top marks, the source material suggests we need to pivot away from a purely security-driven viewpoint and look at this through a constitutional lens. Let's look at how you should construct that defense.
Let's ground this in current affairs first. The government recently created 5 new administrative districts in Ladakh. And please get these pronunciations right for your interviews. Nubra, Changthang, Sham, Zanskar, and Dras.
Now, while this kind of administrative accessibility is definitely a positive step for such a vast, tough terrain, we have to critically analyze, does it actually fulfill the region's democratic aspirations?
For a really high-scoring mains answer, you've got to conceptually separate administration from representation. The source makes it very clear. Districts are merely instruments of administration. A district magistrate implements policy and reports upward to the higher bureaucracy.
Spot on. But on the flip side, we have instruments of representation. A legislator actively shapes the future, and, crucially, it answers downward to the citizens. Just remember, decentralizing administration is not the same thing as granting political agency.
So, the key takeaway from the text is that simply handing out districts doesn't substitute for a real political voice. Why? Because district officers literally cannot legislate on the most critical issues.
Exactly. An IAS officer, no matter how capable, cannot unilaterally write laws about land protection, demographic safeguards, ecological preservation, or cultural autonomy. These areas absolutely require legislative agency, which is exactly what the local population is asking for.
We also can't ignore the historical context here. After the 2019 abrogation of Article 370 and the creation of the Union Territory, constitutional safeguards under the 6th Schedule were repeatedly promised to Ladakh.
Right, and these weren't just vague promises. They were publicly articulated and even reflected in election manifestos in 2019 and 2020. This brings up a really important governance point for your mains papers regarding the sanctity of electoral commitments made to our frontier populations.
Section 2. Analyzing the counter-arguments specifically regarding security and fiscal solvency. Let's see how the source systematically dismantles the 2 main objections often cited against establishing a Ladakhi legislature.
Faculty Anjali, tackling the security argument first, historical precedents provide absolute gold for your GS2 answers. States like Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, and Sikkim were granted full statehood despite tiny populations. We're talking 2 to 6 lakh, and highly sensitive international borders. That's completely right, madam. The source essentially argues that border integration actually requires political inclusion. The idea is that strategic borders are secured much better by politically enfranchised citizens than by military presence alone. Moving on to the fiscal objection. You know, the argument that Ladakh just can't generate enough revenue to sustain a legislature. Well, we have to remind the examiner that India's cooperative federalism is fundamentally built on redistribution.
It really is. I mean, even our most populous states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar rely heavily on central tax devolution and central grants and aid. The point being, fiscal solvency has never been the sole entry ticket to Indian democracy.
Plus, the idea that Ladakh is economically insignificant is totally flawed according to our sources. Just consider this massive number. 13 gigawatts.
Right, that refers to the colossal renewable energy project planned right in the Pang region of Changthang. We are talking about what's set to be one of India's absolutely largest energy infrastructure projects.
And the financial scale of this is just staggering. It's a planned investment of 50,000 crore rupees, with a potential 7,000 crore rupees in annual income.
Aspirants, please use this data in your answers. This completely proves Ladakh is not some insignificant region. It is literally central to India's energy future.
And that brings us to a really critical governance dilemma. With these massive solar parks and transmission corridors popping up, who actually negotiates the terms of this massive transformation?
Exactly. Who decides the land rights or the grazing rights for the local Changpar herders? What about local jobs? Should this be decided by an appointed administrative officer or an accountable legislature made up of local elected representatives?
Ultimately,
The very core of India's constitutional ethos is recognizing that fragile frontier regions require distinct protections. You absolutely must include this phrase in your exam. Uniformity across the Union is not the same as equity.
Couldn't agree more. The exact same constitutional imagination that gave us the sixth schedule understands that holding staggering differences together requires careful nuance, not just, administrative tidiness.
Aspirants, I strongly advise deploying this profound Sri Aurobindo quote in your GS2 conclusion or maybe your philosophical essay. It reads, "The strength of a republic is not measured by how tightly it controls its frontiers, but by how deeply even its farthest regions feel they belong." It's powerful, isn't it? It just beautifully captures the whole essence of federal belonging and national integration.
To wrap things up, the voice rising from Ladakh today is not just a demand for some special privilege. As our source material clearly highlights, it is a deeply constitutional appeal to be trusted with its own future. Extremely well said, madam. So, dear aspirants, the question we leave you with is this. How will you articulate this delicate balance of administration, representation, and federal equity in the exam hall? Reflect on these frameworks, keep up the answer writing practice, and we'll see you in the next explainer.